evening, everyone. We have another episode of Entertas IT Tech Talks presented by Tech Knowledge Worldwide. In this episode, we're going to be doing an access control roundtable, talking all things access control. Since I am not an expert at all in access control, don't install it, don't sell it, don't do anything, I am going to be handing it off over to Mick from Trican Security. He's going to be hosting this roundtable. And, take it away, Mick.
Hey, thank you. I just want to thank you guys for finally doing an access control podcast and, allowing guys like us to be a part of it. Really, thank you. And it's stuff we want to talk about, and it's stuff that's going on in the industry. And hey, it's part of being a tech. So, thanks for letting us have it. I picked this panel because of some discussions we'd had previously, and some people had a lot of opinions on it. And I think today what we want to focus on is access control in the cloud, right? That's the big topic. Everything is cloud these days, and access control is no stranger. I mean, we're moving to it just like everybody else is, like all the as a services out there. Access control is coming. I'll let some of the guys introduce themselves a little bit, but we have my good friend Uncle Bear, Security Today, and other things. Go ahead, introduce yourself, Bear.
Yeah, I'm Uncle Bear at Uncle Bear _ on Instagram, and at Security Today Podcast. Soon to be brought back to you via Sprinter IT, so we're gonna kick that thing back up. But happy to be here. I've been in access control and physical security for about a little over a decade now, so I feel like I'm just getting my feet wet. But glad to be here.
There we go. And he's our resident podcast expert, so he'll keep us on track. And Kyle, go ahead. Why don't you introduce yourself?
What's up, guys? Kyle with Sophia Consulting and Integration, based out of Birmingham, Alabama. Been in the business about 5 years now, running my own thing for 2.5. So all things access control on our end. Everything's in the cloud, so excited to have this convo.
Definitely. So I will say this, when it comes to access control in the cloud, and I don't want to start the discussion off by saying it's awesome, right? No, I don't think anybody's going to disagree. It's awesome. But there's some things that have been happening in the industry that kind of, I don't know, it's going in a direction. I don't know if we're going to stop it with one podcast, but it's going in a direction that I don't necessarily agree with. Now, that being said, I think cloud-based is just the way to do this for access control, especially when you got things that you need to manage remotely. There was the old way of doing things, and I still have people come to me and say, well, I can do everything the cloud does, I just VPN into it. And I tell them, well, I could do it from my phone without VPNing into it. And I could do it on vacation without having my machine set up to VPN. And I can do it when your, security gateway is down. That's a big thing. Having that VPN set up and ready to go takes some time, and it takes configuration, and I've had it go bad, and I got to wait till I get back in town to take care of it. So definitely my opinion of access control, it's ready for the cloud. When you get to installation, I wouldn't say it saves you a lot of time, but it does cut a few hours off, right? Because you have to provision a machine, you've got to install all the software, set it all up, and then there's the ongoing. There's coming back. There's a new version, security patches, all the things that come along with running software on some type of machine. Nobody can run a machine just, especially in this day and age with cybersecurity and everything going on, you can't just let it run. It's not going to work. That's a bad model. And that's just how I see it. I mean, how do you see this playing out, Bear?
Yeah, I think that when it comes to cloud, it's just a trend that we can't ignore. I try to talk about how, people were, shady about the internet being something that it would ever be. The, television, radio. It's when you have these big technologies come down the pipe, and then when it's niche to like our industry, you find that people are a little bit resistant to it. It's just, I think that they see it kind of as a feature, like, oh, they just, this access control platform is able to be on the cloud, and that's just a feature that Brevo or Motorola or something want to pitch out. But I do think that it will be the way of the world in 10 years for sure, but maybe even 5. Your on-prem access control will be reserved to like enterprise and maybe a couple of systems that you can get your hands on, but it's definitely going that way.
How about you, Carl? How do things look on your side?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I agree with Bear from the standpoint of like everything's going there. I mean, Brandon's seen a lot of this over the course of what he does, going from even like, especially like VoIP, anything phone related, even your backups, like everybody moving to Office 365, moving to SharePoint, everything like that. So when it comes to just like servers in general, nobody's really running servers themselves anymore for almost anything. And then when you throw in the fact that a lot of guys who are coming from this like legacy access control side of things, like how many of them do you trust to actually know how to run a SQL server or, like actually upkeep anything like that? Like, so like that's one component is like stop making, somebody who's typically doing alarm and security kind of stuff isn't an IT guy. So why do you expect him to be able to maintain something like that when that's just a whole different skill set? So I mean, on our side, I started Sophia 2.5 years ago, and literally every single access control system we've done, probably 50 systems now, is in the cloud. I don't have a single non-cloud offering. I mean, we do have one that we kind of keep in the back pocket for like school systems or things like that. But for us, it doesn't make sense. And so I think this is where like what I would kind of point the conversation to is there's still always a measure of like there's the trend and where things are going as a whole, which is to the cloud. And then there's also got to be an element of like, who are you personally and as an integrator? And what's your skill set and what's your lane and what can you actually do and support? Like I couldn't sit here and feel confident supporting, a SQL server on-prem access control and having to deal with multi-site patching those things. I've seen it happen and it was just overwhelming to even think about doing. So I had to know who I was, who I'm trying to reach, who my customer base is to say, this is why this product makes sense for us. And for me, it makes sense because like I'm targeting all the companies that are making their IT guys over access control, and they don't want a server. They all want the cloud now anyway. So that's my customer, and that's what kind of why I gear myself that way. But I definitely agree, like the overall trend is going cloud regardless.
100%, and I want to dive into that too. I mean, I would say since COVID hit, I am 100% cloud-based installations. 100%. I haven't put in an on-prem since COVID hit. And I think COVID really exposed a lot of issues we had with just on-prem infrastructure in general, right? People weren't showing up the same. They wanted to be able to do everything from everywhere, right? And that's like this common theme of now is I want to do everything from anywhere. Right? And I don't want to be limited to just this machine that I've set the VPN up for, or just this or just that. I want to do it from wherever I feel like doing it. And I think COVID really just kind of drove that point home. It's like, well, you can't come in, or there is no in. We closed the office. The office is 100% closed. You got a lot of mix of different things that people have done as a result of COVID, right? Some people went, we're remote 100%, we're closing the office, so everything's got to be, available anywhere, anytime from the cloud, or just, in general, just that was the push. And it was kind of more than a push. It was like a big foot in the back, just boom, get out there, get it solved, get it now. And I think as a result of that, everyone just, the value in cloud-based just immediately became realized. It was like, oh, absolutely, I gotta have that. That's what I need. And that's how I've seen it in my market. I'm in the Mid-Atlantic, Baltimore region, and I'm at 100%. I'm at 100%. Kyle, you mentioned you've been also 100% cloud-based installations. Bear, how are you seeing it?
Yeah, I've definitely put in a lot of cloud-based installations. Some on-prem stuff just in that higher commercial end. but it is a lot of cloud. And so one thing that makes me think of is that, you say since COVID you've been doing that, and I feel like the industry trains the customer a little bit when it comes to products and stuff. And so you'll have customers who will experience a cloud-based platform that they can access from their mobile device, which are usually all designed very well, and they have, an easy UI. And so they'll be trained and they'll be like, oh my gosh, this is so easy. I can check doors, I can get notifications, I can turn people off, turn people on, that sort of thing. And then they'll tell the next business guy, and then they'll tell the next business guy. And with that, it just kind of trains the customer that I feel like one of the reasons and one of the driving points to cloud-based access control having a huge chunk of the market is going to be because people will expect those things without the clunkiness of servers or VPNs and having to set all that up. They just want it in, they want it out, and from our point of view as the technician or the business provider of it, it's easier to get in there. And so that was another thing that what Kyle was talking about, of asking the question of like, who are you as an integrator? Who's your customer? Those sorts of things. Well, for sure, from the cloud-based access control I've seen, it is very easy to manage from the install side of things, which makes it easier to have a, not necessarily green tech, but a greener tech put it in. And so when you know that you can just send one guy out who maybe has been in the industry for a year or something like that, and he can go put in OpenPath, or he can go put in these cloud-based access controls, and you're not having to send your seasoned 10-year guy out there to touch the SQL Server and to touch this and to touch that. I really think that just the ease of it is just driving it as kind of a wrecking ball into the industry. And I would rather embrace that on the side of getting paid than not embrace it until 3 years down the road when there's been so many installs already in your area. So
Yeah, and I think you bring up a really good point. It's like there's the advantages to the customer, and then there's the advantages to you as the integrator, right? Just this morning, I had a client call me. He had a door issue. I logged in, looked up his logs, saw who was coming in, coming out, looking at the DPS. I told him who was in the building, who was not in the building. And, some of those on-prem systems, that's not an option. That's not available. So as an integrator, it can help you too. It's like, hey, my door is doing this or doing that. Well, I can look at it. You can look at it, but I also get visibility into the system. I can see what's going on. I can, check. I can even maintain it from without going there. I mean, he's about an hour and 15 minutes away. So I don't want to go over there for any little thing, right? I mean, as you all know, a service call is expensive, right? It's expensive to us, more so to us than it is to the client, because there's costs associated with that service call that don't really get reimbursed, right? That's what we all know. Every time we make a service call, it's the cost the client pays, but then there's the your time away,
cost of what you lose to do something else.
Right. I'm not doing something else, and I'm driving. My brain is focusing on something. Then you're there, you're troubleshooting. So it does free us up. I mean, I would say, in my opinion, I love doing it because I get that visibility. Not every call turns into okay, well, let's send a truck, or I'll be there in 3.5 hours, or whatever it is. It could be, oh, we figured that out. I know who's in the building, and they didn't use their card. I can tell you that right now. So somebody used the key. So mystery solved, right? You just got to have the right information available to you, but it makes this possible. It makes skipping through and, maybe not making everything into a roller truck service call. We get power through the cloud as well on the integrator side as well as the customer side.
Yeah. So part of this podcast kicked off because of some negatives with cloud access control, which we can share in a minute. But from your guys' opinion, what would you say is the biggest negative as an integrator on the cloud access, and what's the biggest negative for your customer to do cloud access versus maybe some of their other options? Because there are negatives, if we're honest.
Yeah, and I would say this, and I call it a negative, but I got to really put some quotes around it. there's a lot of people who don't want that recurring cost. They're resistant to it. They're going to have to get over it, right? Because that's the world is going. Microsoft Office is a subscription now. Everything's a subscription now. I mean, you're just not going to beat it. And they don't want to pay it. I mean, sometimes it turns into several $1,000s a year in a reinvestment. Now, I could sit here and craft an argument as a salesman to say, hey, you're saving so much on this and you're saving so much on that. But, in your SMB market, they're still going to hit you with, well, I don't want to pay $3,000 every year for the same system I bought. And that to me, when they hit you with that argument, maybe I'm not the best salesperson in the world, but take some maneuvering to kind of change their mind that this is a good thing. So in my opinion, that will be the tough part of it. Brandon, you look like you want to say something.
From my world, one thing that you guys could use from a sales tactic perspective is when you're selling that on-prem system and there's no reoccurring revenue there and no reoccurring costs, you're not getting any updates, you're not getting any improvements to that door access system. You're not getting any additional support, or you're having to pay for support on top of it if you have to call the manufacturer. When you go to a cloud system, just like with us, we're paying monthly not just for that service, but we're paying for the support, we're paying for the updates, we're paying for all the patching, all that fun stuff that is all incorporated into that cost. And that's what I tell my customers when, like, for our Meraki firewalls, we have to pay a yearly or bi-yearly subscription for the license for the firewall. Well, you're getting a full security bundle that's roped into that cost. So yes, you're paying a large amount, but you need that to cover all the security because you have humans making changes to your security stack and all your security updates on a daily basis or on an hourly basis. Yeah. And that's kind of the same thing in your guys' world. You can go and install an on-prem system and not get any features for another 5 years until you replace the system. With a PDK system or OpenPath, you can get a whole brand new feature in 6 months because you're paying for that support. You're paying for that those updates and all that stuff. It's built into the cost, and that's a good selling point for the customer.
That's a big part of it is like the maintaining updates. Like we do OpenPath and PDK are our two primary cloud solutions, and then Phoenix is our third that we're kind of waiting to unload once they have Mercury hardware in stock. But one of the things that there were some downsides with some of the OpenPath features. Like one of the small thing, but I'm looking at it right now, is like you couldn't name your entry schedules and stuff. So if you had like an unlock and then you wanted to put a holiday and something, like you couldn't name it the lock schedule, the holiday schedule. You couldn't name it like Christmas, things like that. So it was all just numbers and you had to read it. And then like just something as small as that, even like, oh, like here's a small update that just happened, and like you're making those improvements. But then I thought about the concept of like, you think, oh, on-prem, well, I don't have to pay anything, but actually most of the people who have on-prem, they still pay annual fees because a lot of them are doing your SSAs, your software support agreements, and they are coming in, and then now you're paying for the truck roll, the labor, and like a 30% license or so. It's typically where it falls, at 20 to 30% range of what you originally paid on the license. So it's not like you don't have recurring costs with an on-prem system. You're just more streamlining what that cost is, and you know what it is, and you don't have like as many mysteries involved in it.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, and that like annual payment that you have to give out, or sometimes you can break it up monthly. Mick, you said that you put it in air quotes, and you kind of have to. I mean, you can't just have everything for free. And I like, though, that it kind of bottlenecks and forces your customer to, in a sense, be more security-minded. And the way that it does that is it gives them that visibility that you were talking about, Mick, that they then can see the reports, or they then can get the notification, or they can, if they fire a guy at 10 o'clock at night from their night manager, they can go in and just turn them off while laying in their bed or something like that. That type of just ability to do that is usually a little dazzling in their eyes. They're like, oh yeah, that sounds great. And then on top of it, it will then cause them to think of their system maybe from a different perspective than like common when putting in alarm systems. You put alarm system on a house and then they don't arm it for the first 3 months. And you have to send them an email to say, hey, remember you have an alarm system. Because if you just put it in and it's just devices on a wall, then they're not putting their mindset or their thought into it. So having it on their phone, having it be managed by us, the integrators, so that we can reach out to them and say, hey, I noticed you went offline last night. Was everything okay? Then it keeps that security in their mind. And as a big proponent of my saying of security as a mindset, I just like that it kind of forces you to do that.
Yeah, that's a great point, because it makes the access control system more interactive, right? It's not this big box running at the job and I can only touch it when I'm there. It's like it's getting alerts, real-time alerts sent to you easily, right? Because there's ways you could have done it in the old way, hook up your email account to it, or maybe, get it plugged in. But the cloud just makes it so much easier to get all of these real-time alerts. Somebody's in the building. I had a door forced, or, motion, whatever it is. Because your door system is, it's not your alarm system, but it is part of your intrusion detection, right? It's anomalies. It's things happening that they shouldn't be happening at that time of night, or people coming in when they shouldn't be, or attempting to come in when they shouldn't be, right? So it does help it bring it together, make it more interactive.
Well, and from my perspective as the IT person, one thing that I find kind of funny with these on-prem systems is you walk into some of our clients and there's this old dusty box that's running like Windows 7 or an ancient version of Windows, and you're like, what's that? Oh, that's our access control system. We have to run a legacy box because we don't want to upgrade. So we're talking about security of your whole entire business here and all the door access, but we're running it on a machine that is not supported by Microsoft, that could have a bunch of security holes in it, and it's just like mind-boggling to me. So our whole focus with access control is security, but the linchpin is the box that's running it that's no longer supported. So what are we doing here? Yeah. At least with a cloud system, you know that you guys are secure. You know that you're getting those updates. You don't have to worry about this random legacy box in the corner collecting dust. I have a volunteer fire department that we have a little Dell box that's probably 8 years old sitting in a corner because they don't want to have to pay for the service call to migrate it to the new computer we put in for them. And I'm like, okay, so now I got to support this system for how long? It's mind-boggling. And if they would have got the right company that came in and said, here's an OpenPass system, or here's a PDK system, or any type of cloud-based system, then we wouldn't have had to worry about this. And the whole reason they went to this system is because their original Amazon system crapped the bed one night when they had to go to a call and they couldn't get in the building. Yeah. So another failure of an on-prem system right there.
Yeah, it goes back to what you probably run into a lot, is what makes or breaks an IT company is the same thing on this end when it comes to those on-prem machines. Is it's all about the thoroughness of the technician and the company that's actually implementing it, because like Nick said, you can do, and there's ways to make a lot of like the cloud functionality happen for an on-prem system, but your technician has to know and be thorough and do all that, and there's like less automatic kind of ways of knowing that it either is or isn't working, or like that it is or isn't on like it's supposed to be. You have so many more checks and balances in that just, frankly, a lot of our people in this industry aren't qualified to really do on a networking level. And so it is nice that some of those things, like your email notifications and even just like password access for the admins of the system, like if biometrics on their phone, or like there's a toggle in the software, and it can be as simple as like a couple minutes just to check that, versus having to teach somebody how to create the VPN and set up SMTP and set up the alerts for this and this notification and all that kind of stuff. It just gets to be like you start piling all of these little needles on top of somebody, and next thing you know, they're underneath a whole barrel of hay.
Yeah, and I mean the email notifications is a big thing, because for the longest time, I bet all these guys were just using Gmail accounts or very simple things that you can easily turn on, do SMTP, no problem, you're up and running. And then, 3 months ago, Google said, nope, no more. We're going to Modern Auth. You now have to use an app password to do simple SMTP authentication. And even in my IT groups, people are like, how do I set this up? I can't do scan to email anymore. We were using a Gmail account. It just doesn't work anymore. And you run into the access control guys who just don't understand the networking world and the IT world like we do. They're not going to know that you need to go to SMTP to go set up an account there and use a relay server with them just to get your notifications set up again. Whereas with the cloud, it's just built in. You're good to go. You guys don't have to worry about it. So it's, again, one less headache you guys have to worry about.
Yeah. I want to introduce Kevin. Thanks for joining, Kevin. You want to just give us a quick who you are, where you're from?
Kevin from Ottawa, Ontario. You want more details on that?
He reminds me, when you watch Monday Night Football and the guy's like, oh, I'm such and such from the School of Hard Knocks. The U. Or some elementary school. That's Kevin. So you know what? Kevin's in the perfect time, right? Because I think we've said enough good things about cloud. So Kyle, do you want to go over your bad scenario of where the cloud wasn't in your favor, but I wouldn't blame it all on the cloud, but kind of the conversation that sparked all of this.
Yeah, so there's I think to your point, it's not necessarily an issue with cloud, but more so manufacturers, because there's probably two. I do PDK and OpenPath both, and both of them have some pretty negative things, like PDK not having like memory on all their substream boards, so like those being network attached, like that's an issue that's like brick doors before. But OpenPath, like what sparked all this was we had an OpenPath system, and there's a bug in their single door controllers. We've run into it on 3 separate sites now. We just happened to catch it on the 2 other ones where the controller wasn't getting like complete communication with the cloud servers. It was communicating in some way, but whatever it wasn't doing wasn't was because it was incomplete. It was like showing offline in OpenPath side, but not in our software portal. And so we never got notification from OpenPath that our device was not communicating, wasn't online, which is part of their whole setup, right? And so then that brought up this whole like issue with recurring licenses and whatnot, where in order for OpenPath to protect their hardware from being utilized without their subscription, they have a default on their system that after 7 days of the controller being offline, it completely bricks itself, where it doesn't operate locally anymore off of your local memory of what's been programmed to it. And so it just completely bricked the site, and I had to drive four hours on like a Saturday morning to go service a single door gym customer and get them, like, I had to call another company to get them into their building, and then because there was a maglock door that we took over, that's a whole other category of issues we'll talk about. But anyways, calamity of errors. But the thing that kind of led to all that and uncovered some of these other things was that the default and how OpenPath or other companies are kind of protecting themselves from having their hardware utilized without subscription. And so, yeah, that put us in quite the bind.
Yeah, I mean, we've talked about this before, and I think it's a tough one. And I've never really been a fan of that, you buy the equipment, right? But you have to keep a subscription, or else the equipment that you bought is unusable. That model never really went down for me. I mean, it never went down well. There's a few companies, I won't mention their names, Bear will, but I won't mention their names, that do that, right? They're very aggressive when it comes to keeping their customer, or even just allowing you to continue using equipment, not just using the services. Because I could definitely understand, hey, if you're not paying, you're not allowed to use my cloud, my storage, my software, my updates, like all the things that we mentioned previously are the benefits to the cloud. I could see stopping the benefits, but I think it's a whole different paradigm to brick the equipment, right? Because the equipment wasn't free. The equipment's not a rental. I mean, and in most cases, people pay almost the same amount an on-prem system costs a lot of times. Door controllers, locks, all these things for it. So fundamentally, I have a problem with that, to just, just to turn around and say, hey, you bought it, but you stopped paying me, so it's worthless. And I try to and I'll give you this scenario, right? And this might happen, who knows? You go into a car dealership, you buy a nice brand new pickup truck, and after your 6th year of driving it, they come back and say, hey, there's a subscription fee, and it won't start until you pay for it. And everybody would probably look at me and say, oh, that's preposterous. That'll never happen. It's happening right now.
Yeah.
It's happening. It's happening. You know what I mean? So that's how I see it,
Tesla? Are you saying Tesla as a service? Is that what you said?
Well, hell, I've been told by my dealers that that's coming from every manufacturer in the next 3 to 5 years. So,
Yeah, they passed a law on it that they can shut it down. They're passing it under this is side note, but they're passing it under drunk driving. So they're saying that if you're driving erratic, they can shut your vehicle down if it's an electric vehicle. Yeah.
Wow.
So buy old now and maintain.
So my scenario wasn't that far off.
Those conspiracy theories about to roll in now.
But I mean, how do they get around it with life safety to just shut your system down? Isn't there legality there?
It can pull over.
Well, no, I'm talking about access control. Life
safety, and I'll talk for the U.S. because I know Canada's a whole different ball game. After talking with Kevin all the time,
they just say sorry. And
that's
it's
why
okay.
we got Kevin here.
That's why we got Kevin here. But you can always leave, and under the U.S. laws, you can always leave. Now, getting into the building, whole different ball game. Leaving the building, for us, it's free egress at all times, right? So
yeah, I mean, same. In fact, I think we're probably even a little more strict about that, except in the case of prisons.
Oh,
and we have
free leave there.
They're not allowed to.
Yeah, I think that falls under institutions for us. Institution.
Yeah,
code
we have some buildings that have a similar classification, like halfway houses and things like that, and spaces where guys are not criminally responsible, things like that that are classified like prisons, but just look like a regular residential home, but it's got mag locks and all the exterior doors.
Right.
But anyways, back to your earlier point about cloud-based access control. I mean, I'm all for cloud-based access control. I'm all for the RMR, but any system that is held hostage when it doesn't have a connection to WAN is just preposterous. I mean, we as installers we can't be recommending products like that. It's ridiculous. Like in building automation, we always say a good system is reliable, a great system is redundant, and anything that bricks itself after losing communication is not redundant. And I mean, I can't entertain products like that, and I would never recommend such a product. If a manufacturer told me that was a stipulation of it, I'd simply look elsewhere. It's not like we don't have a lot of competition in the market.
Yeah,
and that's such a good. That brings up this whole other side of things too. Is what is being frankly communicated to us. What questions do we know how to ask when it comes to dealing with the manufacturers? I'd probably be in that same boat. Been a lot more cautious in some of this. Had I known, because what they always communicate, if it loses WAN connection, it's got local memory. I'm like, well, that's perfect. That's what I'm looking for, right? Because I don't want it to be dependent upon a WAN connection. But what they don't tell you is, it's going to brick itself. They never would tell us that. And so, we did find, with OpenPath specifically, there's a way to change it from 7 days to 60 days. But why is your default 7 days? I mean, there's definitely sites out there that have, that are going to have issues inside of, that could take a week to resolve. You live in certain areas, it could take a week to get fiber back to your building, and I don't, there's weird things that could happen. So the fact that it's a week is just preposterous.
Yeah, I can't get behind that.
Yeah. So Kevin, you do a good mix of on-prem and cloud from what we've seen. Probably.
Yeah, I mean,
And-
well, here's the thing. I host in Ottawa. We're a little bit strange because the federal government buildings use mainly Cantech equipment, so it's like Cantech is stocked by Wesco Annixter and ADI. I could walk in, I could buy any piece of Cantech equipment that I want. And pretty well, yeah, I might get a smattering of other devices here and there, but everything else is special order or you're waiting for it. I mean, I have access to a whole slew of products, but the city is really run by Cantech. And that being said, it gets spec'd on a lot of jobs too. So Cantech offers their cloud solution, their Hattrick solution, but instead, what I do is kind of not what the manufacturer wants people doing, but I host their software on AWS, and I sell my own cloud solution.
Yeah.
And I can sell that at a fraction of the price of competition, and still make some RMR off it, and I can hold my own clients hostage as opposed to having a manufacturer hold me hostage, and I'm the one responsible for that server and for the maintenance of it.
I think we're losing your
So
audio a little bit there, Kevin, or at least I am.
Yeah, I lost it too, right at the end.
How about now? Any better?
You're
Yeah.
good. I think we got that you
Okay.
host your own AWS and put the
Yeah,
instance
yeah,
out there.
exactly. And so, like, what I'm doing, it does run the risk of the manufacturer being able to shut it down theoretically, because what I'm doing is not backed by the manufacturer. It's just one of those things that so happens to work. And until that day, I'm going to keep running it because I think I have the best of both worlds, really. And with the Cantech platform, there are no slave controllers. There are only primary controllers. Every controller holds about up to 100,000 cards. So I could have a system go down for a few weeks, and it's not a huge panic unless it's a building with a whole bunch of tenants moving in and they have to issue new cards. So there's never anything that's a real panic when it does screw up.
Well, and that brings up, I mean, that just kind of circles back what we said at the beginning, too, is like understanding who you are as the integrator, who your customer is, et cetera. Like, I know another guy here in Alabama he hosts his own Cantech system as well, and he has made a killing doing it. But, like, back to the question of, like, who are you, what are you capable of? Like, Kevin's one of those guys who's just going to figure shit out. Like, he's just going to dig in and, like, based on everything I've seen, like, he's run into it. He's figured a way through everything, and you have to make decisions about, like, what's my business going to focus on, what am I capable of doing, what do I have capacity to do, what does my team have capacity to do. Like, I wouldn't be able to do that. I've like thought about, like, I actually would love to host my own 2N access control because I've done it a few spots and all that, but I don't know how to do it, and I don't have the time to figure out how to do it. So I've kind of more leaned on the cloud,
and honestly,
ready for cloud systems that already exist.
If we're talking about a pure business standpoint, I'd probably still be more profitable just with going with somebody else's platform and reselling that. I mean, I kind of did it this way because I wanted to try it out, and then I kind of ran with it. But it is more work. There's no question, especially isolating all your sites every time you spool out something new, and you've got to set up the web interface for the client and make sure that they can't see any other buildings of any other systems that you host. And so, I mean, and really at the end of the day, am I making more money off it? Probably not. It's probably kind of a wash.
Yeah. Bear, you've been quiet. I'm gonna let you let it rip.
No, I'm just listening. Yeah, it is a problem when they write things in like that where they want to make sure that they can, in the end, control your system if they want to. But that's not all that far off of a mentality from internet, just the Internet of Things. Bigger companies that are doing that. So I do understand the frustration there. I also think that it's, especially coming from an access control dealer, it's a little more bitter in my mind than coming into 80.
At 80, maybe.
Yeah. Ask them if they got anything other than Cantech. But I do think that coming from an access control provider, it is a little more bitter because you're dealing with the physical security of the site, whereas we know that hostage as a service is definitely something that Voldemort does. I called him Voldemort. The name that should be unnamed. Verkada, people. And so, yeah. But coming from that, it is just your cameras, and you're going to find that, with a VMS or a camera system, it's far more of an investigative tool than it is, physical security on the site. And so when you're dealing with something like an access control provider that has something written in like that, I'm sure that was overlooked and coded in by somebody who has never been in physical security, on the back end when they were developing that. So that's a little concerning, but you just kind of like Kyle is, you got to stay on top of it. You got to push that setting back to the default, or like as far back as you can get it, and really be in contact with your customers if something goes wrong like that. But
I think
for
the
them,
big
yeah, go ahead.
I would say you'd expect, like kind of like into what you said about contact with your customers and stuff. That is one positive in it. Is that usually, like, if I get outside that 7-day window, somebody's going to try to remotely unlock the door or something like that, and it's not going to work, and they're going to reach out to me. But, like, when you run into some of these things that you're talking about, like with physical security, we were on site at a multi-tenant yesterday, like a 9-floor high-rise, and we were working on cameras in an elevator, and I was just talking to the elevator technician who was with us, and I was like, I bet every time you guys get a call, it's like it's an emergency, right? Because you're talking the elevator stops working, like it's a big deal. And he was talking about how it's been really frustrating as things have gotten more tech forward. That he's like, we just have service calls on stuff all the time, and like he had a triage unit at a hospital that like he's getting calls at 1:30 in the morning, and like it's an emergency. He's like, that stuff just never happens with like old hydraulic elevators or whatever. And it's kind of similar. Like I was like, yeah, I mean, we can relate to that to some degree, because when we control people's doors and something goes wrong, it's like we hear about it fast, and we particularly hear about it fast in the case of like the evil maglock that you occasionally have to use, because that does prevent the entering piece. Like the reason like we work so hard to get on to Bear's old skill set of well, still a current skill set, but like your locksmithing side, like we got to know a bunch about that, which is hard enough. Like there's a ton of door hardware stuff, and there's a ton of information about the doors you got to learn to make sure that your customer has like key override capabilities, that their site is master key, that it's a controlled master key, and you're trying to educate them all this stuff. And then if I just throw in like, just going back to the original part of the conversation, throwing in like, okay, now I've also got to be a network engineer. So I've got to be a locksmith, an access control professional, and an IT professional all at once. Like you're just gonna run into like at some point you're not gonna be excellent at one of those things. And like for us, like we focus more on like we need to be excellent at the door, we need to be excellent in how we program wire, all that. And then like I'm just like, hey, they got to figure it out when it comes to the SQL, the server side of things. So just pay for it.
Yeah. And that's a great point. Like that's exactly where the industry's going. And I encourage people when I'm interacting with them on Instagram and they're asking about like what should I be learning, or what courses do you know of? And I always try to push that broad brush. And that's something that we do at Sprinter IT too, with the continuing education of our technicians. We try to hit cabling, we try to hit networking, we try to hit security, we try to hit that door hardware, because the broader the brush of the technician and the company, the more success you're going to have just in the low volt industry as a whole. And it does come down to working in stuff like locksmithing and knowing that door hardware and life safety codes, and and then you get into the cloud access side of it, and now you need to know networking. You need to know the topology of how a network is set up, and if you can get the basics and kind of be that jack of all trades, master of none is still better than a master of one. It comes out as healthier to your career path. So I think it's like encouraging from a cloud access point for people getting into the industry, and because of how it's advancing. But it is something that I think people should keep in the back of their mind, that be learning as much as you can and be soaking it up from all different aspects.
Well, and that's exactly why we created the technology community. We didn't want to just be pigeonholed to being a low voltage community, and that's all that we focus on. Because like you guys have been saying, all of our different fields are starting to blend together.
Mm-hmm.
You need to know the IT side. Some of you need to know the MSP side too, because now you're having to manage different VMSs and on-prem computers for all these different solutions that you use. If you're not in the cloud, then our low voltage guys, we have to communicate with the access guys on our sites. So having guys in the community we can fall back to and ask questions of and learn about these different offerings of on-prem versus cloud for access control. That was the whole point of this community, was bring all the technologies together, because there's so much integration nowadays. It's no longer the access guys are on an island, the security guys are on an island, the camera guys are on an island, the wiring guys are on an island. Everything is all together now, and we all have to communicate together to provide our customers the best experience at the end of the day.
Yeah, I think it's like Bear said, right? I mean, how many different trades had to get their hands involved to just create one piece like the door system, right? You've got your locksmith skills, you've got your door hardware skills, you've got your networking skills. You know, you might have to configure a firewall to get outside. I mean, so, and then you've got your
glass installer skills, like
your glass installer. Then you got your pulling cable guy. So you've got, 5 different hats to put on to make a good system. As in the past, it wasn't quite as much, but the integration between everything is so tight these days, so tight. I mean, I'm on the phone talking to MSPs, and we're talking VLANs and duplicate IPs all day, and they're looking at me like, wow, you know this stuff? It's like, yeah, I couldn't bring a system up if I didn't. You know what I mean? Like, it's not that I want to be really good at it. It's just I don't have a choice. You either learn it or you fail.
Or you just get like me and you learn how to pretend and know. I know the right things to say, but if you put me in to do some of that stuff, I'd be as blind as anybody. But I can talk about it, and I can tell you what I need, and I can listen for what you tell me you need.
I mean, like I said, and I'm just enough to be dangerous, but like I said, you got to pick this stuff up. You got to pick it up fast. Like your job description expands all the time, right? Because you're not just, you might have to run the cat cable. You might have to plug it into the switch. You might have to tell whatever MSP's, in control, hey, this is what I need done. This is the DHCP range that I need reserved. And, all these different things that you really don't think you should be knowing. You need to know it, right? You need to know this stuff.
Well, and it's so refreshing hearing you guys talk and know that you can talk the talk with us and walk the walk, because I've come across different vendors that you say something to them and they just scratch their head like, Bear's not going to be happy with what I'm about to say, but 6 years ago, one of my car dealerships had a HICS system installed, okay? This was prior to all like the vulnerabilities coming out.
Sit back, Bear. Sit back now.
and all the holes coming out. But in my mind, I'm like, I don't want to open up the ports that need to be required to access the system remotely. Why can't we do this over a VPN? I can put a VPN on a cell phone. I can put a VPN on their desktops, and they could access the camera system no problem. These camera guys looked at me like I had 12 heads and said, that's impossible. There's no way this is going to work. We have to open these ports on the firewall or else this HICS system will not work. And
so they got rid of it.
Well, we're about to get rid of it. We're about to get rid of it. That's a whole other story where this
go ahead and hit that button and break their HICS system.
I mean, we know how Bear feels about HIC, and this system has not worked since it was installed. And the company actually gave up after 6 months and said, here, you guys deal with it. And that was 6 years ago. Finally, they've gotten to the point where they're so fed up with the cameras dropping and having to power cycle them that they're finally going to replace the NVR, because that seems to be what the issue is. And then we'll slowly start replacing cameras. But being able to go and talk to a security vendor and not have to argue with him about proper security practices for the network that I'm supporting is really refreshing. I love that you guys are learning from the MSPs and the different IT guys in our community and are able to talk the talk with these different IT vendors and MSPs that you're dealing with. It's got to be a lot easier for you guys to have a working relationship with them.
Oh, 100%. 100%.
Yeah,
I mean, I would
definitely.
say the MSPs are, because a lot of times I walk into a place and it's already a managed system, right? I'm not bringing the switches or anything like that. They're telling me, hey, plug into this port, and this port, and we've got you from there. So I need to understand what we've got you means, because there's a lot of things that make this thing work, and most of the time they're doing pretty good. I mean, they're understanding their side of it, and I'm understanding my side enough to tell them what I need, and we can make it work. And it's just it's raising that bar again, right? It's raising that bar, because if you can't swim with this way things are working, with every access control system is, I would say, plugged into the internet, plugged into the network, like every one of them at this point. So if you can't talk that network talk and at least get 15 minutes of making yourself sound like you're smart, you ain't gonna make it. I mean, this is business. That's where it all comes down to in the end. It's business, and somebody's gonna pick the better integrator.
Yeah, that's dead right, man. I've had more referrals and new business come out of just being able to communicate with MSPs, IT admins. Like, biggest job we have is with a school, and the IT admin is who does the whole thing. It's 180 doors, and to be able to communicate with him about what security protocols need to be. So something even just as simple as VLANs, and like making sure, like, hey, so we need you to segment this, and make sure none of our stuff. I don't want any of my guys. Like, if I tell them, like, hey, I don't want my guys plugging in to your network, like, VLAN this part, do whatever. That earns trust, and it's kind of like what Brandon said. The whole point of all this was getting a chance to kind of commune with all these different people who are experts in different things, and like when we can grab bits and pieces from each other and then like pull all that together. And then sometimes that looks like, hey, I'm calling Brandon to manage this system, or sometimes it looks like, hey, let me ask for a piece of advice. And either way, like, it's going to benefit us all in the long run, because our customers are going to be taken care of, the systems are going to be more solid, they're done the right way. There's a ton of benefits to it.
Yeah, and I think that cloud access is one of those things that also brings our worlds even closer together. I just know that, 4 or 5 years ago, I would have to call the IT guy, or I'd have to go out on site to meet the IT guy to get it. And as much as it wasn't necessary, there was definitely a tension. There was definitely like this, you're the IT guy and I'm just the hardware guy, and it wasn't good blood. But I do feel like, because of cloud access, because of Moore's Law, and because of like communities like this, it's just getting closer and closer together that that's kind of subsided in my mind. I think that the IT industry and the low volt or security industries are definitely much more friendly. When you call an IT guy and you're like, hey, I need to get this up, they're usually now like, oh, okay, yeah, let's do this, let's do that. And it's not like, yeah, okay, well, I'll take it from here. That type of thing.
Sure.
What would you guys say that, particularly Mick and Bear, when it comes to like moving forward, let's just, say, all right, we know the trajectory where things are going. What are you changing about, or like, what are you doing differently over these next several years? Like, obviously we're all already doing cloud access control, but what are we doing? Like, what are you guys specifically taking away? Like, here's what I'm going to do to make my cloud access control better. Like, maybe, and you can maybe share an example of something that you've learned that like maybe pushed you to that. Because I got my example here, but I'll let you guys answer.
Yeah, I would say I'm very picky about who I partner with, right? And like PDK, and a little tidbit for you, there's a rumor that PDK, I heard from some of their people, that their new red controllers are not going to be that slave all going to the cloud node, that the reds are going to be intelligent controllers on their own.
I've heard that rumor too.
With memory. So I talked to them at ISC, and they said, yep, that's what we're doing. But,
they've heard that complaint a lot from everybody, and so you're right. I'm hearing the same thing too.
It is a flaw. In my opinion, it's a flaw in the system, because not every network is reliable. But us, as integrators, that is our responsibility. We have to ask those questions and figure out, because it's not like I had an interaction with a big company years ago, and they told me, hey, we'd love to have you as a partner, but you can't sell anything else. And I'm like, it's not a good fit. I mean, I have customers that can't afford you. I'm not going to, I'm not a slave to you, I'm a slave to them, right? They will get the right product that fits their needs. And I'm not just going to spoon feed everybody the same, medicine, right? It's listening, and it's getting to, what kind of environment do you have? What kind of customer are you? Are you really savvy? Are you, can you handle this? Can you handle the solution that I'm giving to you? So I would say for me, the thing that makes my difference is I've been pretty picky with who I take on as a partner. Right now I'm doing PDCam Phoenix, and because they serve different markets, right? Mm-hmm. And I enjoy Phoenix because they are not that hostage as a service, right? You stop paying, you stop getting the bonuses, the benefits, but you don't get bricked. And and in my opinion, that's between me and my clients, and I don't want that for them, so I won't sell it to them, right? And that's what held me back kind of from OpenPath, because OpenPath is pretty awesome. I'll admit it, it's pretty awesome. And I'll also have to admit that, we talk all this about, hostage as a service, subscription as a service. It is fairly new, but I have had 0 people come off and stop paying subscription. 0. Mm-hmm. I don't know what your experience is, but it's a hypothetical at this point, right? The hypothetical that people want to come off. Now, granted, I don't have 20-year customers on the cloud who want to come off. It just doesn't exist. We're still new. But as far as I can see, the juice is worth the squeeze, right? The money they're paying, they haven't turned around and said, I do not want to pay this anymore. I haven't had that experience yet. I don't know, maybe you guys can touch on it as well. But, I think for the integrator, it's recommending the right fit for that client, being able to give the right fit for that client, listening to what that client wants and needs, and delivering it, right? Installed correctly, programmed correctly. And it's just kind of one of those situations where it's 5 stars. You know what I mean? At the end of the day, they look at you 5-star, and you look at them and say, you know what? We did something good here. And in terms of what the cloud already brings, I don't know if I could ask for more. I mean, they're knocking it out the park. I mean, they got features that I haven't even really taken advantage of yet that are pretty awesome.
What about you, Bear?
Yeah, I think I agree with everything that Mick said there. I also agree that OpenPath is awesome. I mean, it's something that we carry as Sprinter IT, even with, so it's a little hard to tag the line or the maybe clickbait of hostage as a service to just having a window of time before it bricks. That's not great, and it's not great in access control and security, but at the same time, they are a company that is faithful. They're a company that isn't trying to hurt the interest of the industry, and they're not trying to hurt the interest of where we live. And so with that, it's definitely something that we carry. I love the integration between cloud access control and cloud camera. I mean, you're just getting into an environment that the integrator for their client doesn't have to be spending a lot of money and doesn't have to be, a subject matter expert to give clients the features that Mick was talking about, where you can now get a really good grip of your security on a site, from your access control to your cloud cameras to your intrusion detection, and they can all work together. So I think that's a really good thing and a really good place that it's going. One thing that I know that I'm working on personally is trying to get more trying to get smarter in the network side of things from the cybersecurity aspect, so that I know that if security is my passion and that's the lane that I'm running in, I want to be able to do that behind the ones and zeros and in the physical world. So that's one place that I'm pushing myself. But I also think that from the aspect of cloud access and where it's going, there's this thing in access control called metrics, And you get it in high enterprise access control where you can run reports and it can show you errors, it can show you things in the system that are happening, how they're happening, it can graph it all out. And those metrics in high enterprise systems, they turn around and they use that to pitch to stakeholders why we should be putting this much money into our access control. But you can take those, and there's kind of this undercover world of being able to bring a site to almost like full 100% proof security because you're on top of it and you're doing maintenance before the issue gets to hand. And so I would like to see Cloud Access Control kind of spend some time in metrics that they can get a readable report in front of clients that tell them what their access control is doing, that tell them if they're having on Fridays, for some reason, this door is getting more holds on it during 2 and 3 o'clock. And now they can have their foot patrol go over there and see what's actually happening. So I would like to see that out of Cloud Access, and I think it's got the power to do it.
Yeah. And we're probably right on the cusp of that with all you have from like analytic video and stuff like that. There's got to be, surely somebody's working on that somewhere.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm in total agreement with you guys. I think the biggest thing that I hold to in how, especially being that we are in some ways, when we do engage in this cloud model, we are more responsible to doing that ethically with the customer because it does lock them in some way, shape, or form. Even if they, like let's say they do like, hey man, like you sold me a system and this really didn't fit me, like what Mick was saying, like I got to make sure like one, it fits you, but that the person needs to have some level of flexibility to say, no, you're not servicing me right as an integrator, or this product isn't doing what I had asked you to make it do, and we need to switch it up. And like that's a lot of money, that's a lot of time, that's a lot of learning costs for a customer. And so, my experience, I'm already really hard on sales guys. Like I come from my first job in security was a manufacturer sales rep, and then it was working in sales with an integration company before I started my own and got more involved in the weeds of everything. And I'm honestly like even more encouraged to continue down this path of being like really relentlessly questioning of the sales guys, of the manufacturers, and doing like this next level of due diligence. And and I was like Mick too, like I was like really thoughtful about who I took on, but man, I've learned so many more questions to ask. And frankly, when we get to this place where a lot of guys do end up, which is like, hey, I don't know the answer to that, or I'm not really sure, I hadn't heard that, or I don't think so. It's this pressing point of saying like, well, you need to find out, because I can't go to my customer and sell this product, sell this solution if I don't know the answers to these questions, because like that's my integrity on the line. That's my security mindset on the line. And so I feel just extra pressed to like continue down that road of like, hey, I really am the middleman between like a customer having what they need and the right experience and these manufacturers, selling their products. And so, like we're the hinge piece of a lot of this. And so like I think we really need to take that responsibility seriously.
Yeah,
100%.
I really agree with that. I think that you're hitting a really good point, because the people on this podcast, the people watching this podcast, we are the people that dictate the purity of security in our country. Like how secure is the place that we live, is the place that our kids are, is the place that our families are. Like when they walk into, whether it's a Chick-fil-A or whether it's like, the work that they go to or something like that, like we are the lens to which this industry stays pure. So pushing it back to the sales guy and back to the companies that we carry to say, why does it do this? Why does it do that? Why are you acting like this? And then pushing it back towards the client to say, okay, what do you need? What can I put in for you? Like, where are your needs on this site?
Definitely.
That's where
definitely.
the purity of the industry will stay pure. And it's on us. It's on us.
Definitely. Guys, I want to thank you all for joining us. I got the reminder that we got to stay to an hour, but I'm sure we could probably do this all day. And it probably brings up a good topic. I mean, we jumped a little bit and touched on to the cloud and the cameras, and who knows, maybe that might be the next podcast. But thank you, and I want to turn it over to Brandon to wrap us up.
Yeah, thanks
Yeah,
guys
thank
for
you.
doing this. We'll definitely have to get you guys back on to dive deeper into other aspects of security. It's not just access control, it's also cameras, alarms, all of that's going to the cloud, and that is another handful of roundtables that we could talk about. So I have a feeling this is going to get people to want to continue the conversation. So Mick, where can people find you to continue the conversation about this?
Sure, you can find me on Instagram, Trican Security.
Awesome. How about you, Bear?
Yeah, Trican Security, one of the OGs, baby. This is Jeff out of Better Days Tech, printing that, baby. You can find me on Instagram at Uncle Bear, BAER _, and at Security Today Podcast, which is the podcast that I run, and we're getting it back. We're bringing it back up. Hopefully, it'll be weekly. Brought to you by Sprinter IT. So, yeah, you can find me there, and I love interacting with people on Instagram. I love DMing and talking and stuff like that. So any questions, anything you see, and new tech, I love new tech. So if you find something, be like, oh, you know who like this? Uncle Bear, push it towards me. So yeah.
Awesome. And how about you, Kyle?
Yeah, you can hit me up on Instagram at sophiaconsulting.io. I'm not posting a whole lot right now, but I do get on there. I do communicate, chat with folks, and watch what other people are doing and learn. So hit me up there.
Great. Well, thank you so much, guys. And if you would like to join the Slack community where all three of these guys and myself are in daily, continuing conversations like this upon a million other things, you can send an email to slack@technologyww.org, and we will send you an invite to our Slack channel. Well, thanks again, guys, for doing this. We will have to do it again soon. Have a great night.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks.
Thank you.